I'm just gonna come out swinging straight out the gate here. I did not like American Psycho. It was not an enjoyable read. At all, but there is still some substance. It's accurate with its critique. It was written by Bret Easton Ellis and published in 1991. It was his third book. I have not read anything else by Bret Easton Ellis, and I'll admit, since I've gotten through American Psycho, I'm not too excited to move on to his next work. I'm really not. American Psycho is not a very long book, but it's not particularly short either. It clocks in at 399 pages in softback. That is approximately 143,000 words. It is clearly a horror novel, but I think that doesn't quite describe it to its exact nature. Horror is a very wide genre. I almost want to call it splatterpunk dark comedy. I think that might be the best way to explain. Maybe splatterpunk dark comedy with, like, fucked up eroticism in there, too. That's pretty much all this book boils down to, is just sex and violence and food and clothes. And that's about it. There is more to it than just that, but that's the vast majority of what you're getting here. And it's not even fun. I love me some Stephen King. I love some Dean Koontz. I love Dan Simmons. I love Robert McCammon. I love Joe Hill. I like horror. I did not like this, because this was, even though it was certainly a horror novel, it was much more just a character study in psychopathy in upper class America. So let's just go ahead and go over the plot. Patrick Bateman has everything he needs. He comes from a wealthy family, and his salary from Pierce & Pierce, a Wall Street firm, funds his most lavish fantasies and cruel desires. He is well-educated, well-dressed, and well-known amongst the high-class New York socialites. He also likes to rape, torture, and kill whatever he pleases, in no particular order. Patrick Bateman is an evil man that does evil things, and the remnants of his sanity have eroded completely, if he was ever sane at all. As I tried to convey with this little summary that I just read to you there, there's not really much plot. This book is just about Patrick Bateman being insane. If you've seen the movie, you get a pretty decent idea of what this book actually is. The movie just distills it down into its essence and cuts out a lot of the fat. The book is overwhelmingly nihilistic. I myself am a nihilist. I wrote a play once that was all about nihilism. And this book is beat you over the fucking face with it nihilistic. It literally starts with the words, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." From page 1 to page 399, it is just sheer brutality and nihilism. There's a point to it, but that's pretty much all you get. The prose, very much like the minimal plot, is very brutal, very straightforward. There's no flowery fiction here. There is no purple prose, if you will. It is all just very dry, clinical explanations. There's a few moments, very few moments that do break out of that, but the vast majority of the novel is just plain description. No zhuzh. It's just Patrick Bateman saying the things that happen. He will name what kind of clothes somebody is wearing. He will mention the type of suit. He will mention if it's double-breasted or single-breasted. He'll mention how many buttons are on it. He's going to mention the color of it. He's going to mention if it's pinstriped. He's going to mention the designer. Always the designer. Very specifically, you need to know the designer. Oh my dear God. Seriously, the descriptions of the clothing, the descriptions of the food, the descriptions of the locations, so much. It is so much. You always get the description. Every time he goes just about anywhere, meets anybody, you get a full head-to-toe description of what they're wearing, and it is so exhausting. There's almost every time you can start a chapter in this book, you can almost count on just being able to speed read the first few pages, because it's just like, oh, okay, cool, we're just going to talk about what the person's wearing. Again, not that I give a fuck, but here we are, we're talking about the clothes. Again, I've been around rich people in my life, and my God, does this not just feel like them? Oh my God. Discussing the characters is a bit weird, because there's really only two characters in this book. There's Patrick, and then there's not Patrick. It's written almost exclusively first-person view from his point of view, and he even openly admits that there's, like, nothing that he feels for just about anyone or anything else. Several times throughout the book he mentions this. And so it gives you this sense of disassociation, the fact that, the only person is Patrick Bateman, and the rest of everything is just something for him to use, or something to hate, or something to be jealous of. That's really the only things that drive Patrick, even though he is also just empty. He's a husk. There's nothing inside. He is an empty cup that has been filled with just rancid rich culture. And shitty rich culture, right? We're talking 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s. Yuppie culture is what he is. He is a rich yuppie. He's a psycho, which led him to both being a killer and a yuppie. They're the natural byproduct of what he is. It's the best way for him to be able to blend into society is to be what he is. If he was a poor man, he wouldn't be able to get away with this shit. He would be like an Ed Gein type. He would have been fucking eventually caught and arrested. Son of Sam and Gacy and so on and so forth. That's not who this guy is. He's not that guy because he was born to a rich and an affluent family, which allows him to just stab a bum in the eyes on 5th Street. Why not? The only exemption from this rule, really, is his assistant, Jean. Jean is in love with him. Patrick makes that very clear from the first moment that we meet her. He literally, my assistant, Jean, who is in love with me, she does seem to actually be genuinely into him. She cannot see the red flags that are Patrick Bateman. Now, granted, boy, isn't that just kind of human nature? A lot of people will intentionally choose not to see the most horrible sides of the people they like, or the people they work for, or the people they feel some kind of a bond with. It's very easy to excuse horrible behavior when you feel close to that person. And so Jean doesn't seem to be able to understand that there's anything. Same, I kind of guess, with Lewis, right? Lewis is, not Lois, Lewis. Lewis is a gay man. He was also in love with Patrick. And now, granted, there's a much different dynamic that plays out between Lewis and Patrick versus Jean and Patrick, but still, both of them are able to put on their blinders and not see Patrick for exactly what he is, just like they are able to put on their blinders and not see the nasty environment that they're in, this really horrible, rich environment that breeds psychopathy. Jean and Lewis, to me, really are the only other characters that feel like genuine characters. Like they're not just carbon copies of things for Patrick to interact with. They also have their own feelings and opinions. Everyone else is just a shitty yuppie. Lewis and Jean, though, have a little bit of difference to them. I think it's possible to argue that both of them are also psychos in their own way, right? American Psycho doesn't just refer to Patrick Bateman, right? American Psycho refers to all of the people in this book, I think. It refers to Jean, it refers to Lewis, it refers to fucking Paul Allen, it refers to all of the characters. They're all psychos because they all participate in the system, and they're doing nothing to stop it. Well, let's actually go ahead and start discussing some of the genuine spoilery stuff. So, spoilers. It was very accurate in the way that it criticizes the American bourgeoisie. It was very pointed, very accurate, and my God, it didn't back down. It's very hard to criticize this book because everything that's wrong about this book is not necessarily wrong. It's not a mistake that Bret Easton Ellis made. It's a criticism. Everything that's wrong about this book is the thing that is wrong with what he is criticizing. For example, 1, the book is extremely selfish. It takes up so much of your time to say so fucking little. Just like rich people, they don't know how to value anybody's time. They think that doing 3 lunches in a day is hard fucking work when they've never picked up a fucking shovel or anything, right? It's not even remotely close. They are so selfish, just like this book is. And to ride on the heels of that, the book is boring. It is stupidly boring. Starting at about page 80, I was like, oh my God, this can't be it. We've got to have something more to this book than this. It's boring as fuck, but so is the upper class. As I mentioned earlier, it is ridiculously nihilistic, horribly nihilistic, as is American capitalism. American capitalism kind of insists that we funnel ourselves towards the fewest amount of people having all of the stuff, and the most amount of the people having the least amount of things, right? It is inherently about dividing and conquering, and just doing whatever the fuck you want. I mean, think about the shit that's come out within the last couple of years. They all want to just gather on some random island in the middle of the sea and just, do some horrible things to children. These are real things. These are very real things that happen. We seem to have quite a lot of Patrick Batemans these days. The point is that the book is extremely nihilistic, as is American capitalism. So, as much as I'm a nihilist, I think the book went a little too far, but the book only went too far because the thing it's criticizing is going too far. So, is the book actually going too far, or is it just pointing out the problem? Another way that this book just remains strikingly relevant is the number of times it mentions Donald Trump's name. I remind you, this book was written in 1991. 1991. This book was written 4 years before I was born, okay? And Donald Trump's name comes up at least 12 times. I didn't start counting until it was just like, Jesus Christ, this is at least like 7 or 8 times it's come up. And then it came up 5 to 8 more times after that. Patrick Bateman is obsessed with Donald Trump. He wants to get into Trump's parties. He mentions the Trump Tower. He talks about, oh, is that Ivanka Trump over there? Like, he is just so fascinated with Donald Trump. In light of the Epstein files, Patrick being so fascinated about Donald Trump, boy, wow. There really aren't very many scenes that I want to discuss because there's not much break in what happens. I mean, it's just sex, and then violence, and then clothes, and then food, and then sex, and then violence, and clothes, and food, and sex, and violence, clothes, and food. It just keeps going. Over and over, repeatedly. That's all it is. I mean, no wonder Patrick Bateman is insane, because his life has absolutely no variation, even though he has all of the ability to have variation. He's fucking nuts. Really cannot stress how repetitive this book is. This almost 400-page novel really should have been about 200 pages. It just carries on and on and on for far too fucking long. But to kind of go back to what I was saying, like, isn't that kind of the bullshit that we've got in America that he's trying to criticize? Hasn't it gone on a little too long? I'm repeating myself. My God, I'm Patrick Bateman. I'm just repeating myself now. The music chapters, though. Okay, that's right. Thank God I wrote my notes down, because the music chapters are the really only difference, right? We talk about Lewis, we talk about Jean. There are some small differences and shit that happens in their scenes, right? A little bit of character growth that happens there. But the music scenes are fascinating to me. I'm not talking about the concert, by the way. The concert is a scene where he's with other people. That's not a music scene. I'm talking about exclusively the Genesis scene, the Whitney Houston scene, and the Huey Lewis and the News scene. The 3 chapters that are just dedicated to breaking down and discussing the entire discography, up to that point, of those 3 artists. Fascinating. These are maybe the most interesting and best parts of the book, actually. The music opens up the question for me of, is Patrick naturally a psycho, or was he made into a psycho? Was this a case of nurture or nature, or both? The music chapters makes me think that Patrick is probably a psycho because of the environment he was raised in, not necessarily because he was born to be a psycho. I do think that it's very possible that some people are just born into psychopathy. However, I think he was shaped into it because of the world he found himself in. During these music chapters, Patrick is not talking to anybody. It is purely just a review of the music. And at least while reading it, I got the sense that the exact words he was using to describe these things weren't his. They were, regurgitations of whatever he found in magazines or what he heard on the television. But I think he genuinely feels this way about the music because he's not talking to somebody. He's not trying to get something from somebody when he's talking about the music. He's narrating exclusively to himself. He's not telling this to somebody. He's not even telling this to us, because Patrick is a psycho. This story is not for us. This story is for Patrick. Patrick is telling himself this story. So it's important. The music is important to him. Why? Why is the music important? I think that might be the only thing he can legitimately feel, right? Like, everything else is just surface level. He doesn't actually feel things, or maybe he does, but it doesn't sink as deeply as the music, and the music can genuinely affect him. Now, is this actually the case? I don't know. This is entirely hypothesis here. I have no idea if that's what Bret Easton Ellis wanted me to walk away with. Maybe he just goes all ridiculous and just analytical into it because he's a fucking psycho and does things unpredictably. Part of me wants to look at it in that Patrick is also a victim of the place that he's in, but that doesn't mean that he's not also a perpetrator. He is evil. He does bad things. He is an adult and he is complicit in the direct cause of many horrible fucking things. So, yes, he's also a bad person. However, he was a victim, which partially turned him into it also. Was he born this way, or was he turned into it? I don't know. I think the music, at the very least, the chapters about music, open up the door for that discussion. It's really the deepest this book ever goes, is 3 chapters that have nothing to do about the normal sex, violence, and clothes and food. Perhaps the saving grace of the book, in my opinion. The last spoilery thing to really consider is, did Patrick actually do any of it, right? And who knows, right? It very much feels like he did a lot of it. I feel like there's a number of things that he definitely did. I feel like there's also a number of things that he didn't do and just thought that he was going to do. As to which ones are which, I don't know if there's a way to be able to tell. I genuinely don't. Paul Allen dying, probably not, because that would have actually be able to be traced back to him. Him killing the taxi cab driver, probably not, because that was followed up by a police chase and helicopters and shit in the sky, so probably not, actually. Also, that was a really interesting part, breaking away and doing that one part, the part where Patrick is scared, putting that part into third person, and where Patrick is doing stuff. I'm not doing stuff. I'm doing things normally because I'm Patrick Bateman. No, Patrick does things. Patrick runs. Patrick hides. Patrick is scared. Not I. That's interesting, but that's a bit of a sidetrack. Did Patrick actually do any of these things? I don't fucking know, and I don't think it fucking matters, really. Did Patrick do these things? Maybe not, but that opens up the other avenue, the only other interesting avenue of thought of, does Patrick even exist at all? I hesitate to think that he does. I'm going to stray away and actually talk about Mad Max for 2 seconds, just because there's a theory that I heard about that I think might fit in here. In Mad Max, why are there 2 different Maxes, right? Well, it's because there's different people. Mad Max is not an actual person. He's the collective name given to some legendary figure, right? Mad Max doesn't exist. He's just the hero of the wastelands who occasionally comes by. It's a figure that everybody puts stock into. Patrick Bateman could be like that too. He is everybody else. He is the collective rich society. Patrick Bateman doesn't exist. That's part of why he's so schizophrenic and has no real control over what he does, because he doesn't exist. Everybody else does. He is the product of everybody else, which I think does help support my theory about the music chapters, about how he is a product of his environment. Perhaps that's literal, perhaps that's only metaphorical. I'm not sure which, but I do think that those 2 ideas complement each other, and at least open up some interesting avenues of thought. In conclusion, I was not happy reading this. I didn't enjoy reading it. It was not fun or pleasant in the slightest, but its criticism was valid. It left a lot to be desired. However, I struggle to determine whether or not that was an actual flaw in what Ellis did with his writing here, or if that was just indeed the point all along. Despite its very surface level appearance, it does at least invoke some fun. I was going to give this book a C-, but at the last moment here, after sitting here and discussing it for a little while, I think I've changed my mind at the last moment. I'm just going to give it a straight down the middle C. I genuinely did not enjoy reading this book, and oftentimes I loathed it. There wasn't much substance in the book, but the substance that there was pretty accurate. I do have to give it that. Reading it in 2026 America puts a lot of shit in an interesting light, and has at least made me think. And I can appreciate the book for that, if nothing else. Now, I will go ahead and caveat this and say that I just don't usually like books that are just character studies. I prefer shit that's heavier on plot. This book is not a plot-heavy book, so take my rating on it with a grain of salt, right? You know, some people might rate this book better, and I could totally see why it just didn't exactly click with me in the way that I had hoped that it would. I really loved the movie. The movie's fucking excellent. The book just was long and bloated. And I that's saying something, because I can get through Stephen King, Peter Straub, Joe Hill, and Dan Simmons. Am I gonna read this book again? God, no. Jesus Christ, keep this thing away from me. I hated this fucking thing. Anyway, my name is Damien. Hi, I'm a writer. I wrote these two books right here. The Circus, an American Fantasy, is my horror fantasy debut novel, and Portraits and Bloodlines is my set of short stories written with my father. I also have 666, or A Play About Stones and How to Carry Them. All of them are available on my website. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good day. Almost exclusively first person.